Hello, welcome to Sunday, September the 8th now you know the rest of the story. Uh, Unfortunately, there's just me here, and we're going to split this into two quick little sessions. We're going to get them both back to back, but just so there's slightly different topics. One is what happened when we went to try to enforce our get the courts to accept the default judgment against the government. Now that's a little bit convoluted, but it leads into the second portion of it. So the first portion is going to deal with the legal aspect and what happened there. The next portion is going to lead into into how the whole scenario helped identify the deep state. If you don't know who the deep state is, or you have a hard time identifying who they might be, by the time we're done this should clarify it. I mean, most people involved with the deep state don't even realize they're involved with the deep state. But let's get back to doing the default judgment first. So we walked in we had all our paperwork filled out to go do the default judgment, and asked to it should have been just a formality. The paperwork had been sent out. We're talking the government had technically since April 16th to respond to it. The judgment, we actually sent it out as a actual notice on the 12th, right? The default went out on the 15th. They had until the 29th. This is back. So we're going from April to June to July. We stretched this out as long as we could for the government to give them lots of time to respond. They didn't respond. And when they finally responded after we started doing these videos. Once we started doing these videos, we got a response on September 4th about the default. And that's where we're at right now. So the courts had a hard time. Every time the clerks went to go do anything, they'd be back and forth on the phone. So we knew there was it was getting a little convoluted. We kept trying to push to try to get our rights administered. They kept coming back with the determination that the Attorney General that had responded on behalf of the CRA was that our case no longer had jurisdiction. Then you would have thought they would have tried to offer me some money, but they didn't. At least the money back that we paid for it at the time, but they didn't, because the courts therefore had allowed an action to go forward that would have been illegal. But I'm going to explain to you why it wasn't illegal. But first of all, I'm going to explain the response. The response came on September 4th. A clear 6 weeks after the last time after their violation when they were supposed to respond. So the response is from the Attorney General of Canada, per Giulio Paletti, counsel for the Federal Crown. Now, when you look him up, he's actually counsel for the CRA, or the Attorney General for the CRA. He works out of Vancouver. So here's his submission, right? So what his defense is: the defendants described by the plaintiff in the notice of claim are one defendant, Her Majesty the Queen, in rights of Canada, the Federal Crown. So that's wrong, but we'll get into that here. That's why we're doing this in two sections, because as we get through this, you're going to see that he forgot a little what we have discovered exists in law that he kind of forgot. The Federal Crown is represented through various agents, which is correct, including the Minister of National Revenue, Canada Revenue Agency, and the Attorney General of Canada. So there, before he left off, of course, the Natural Resource Minister and the PMO and the Prime Minister himself. The Federal Crown denies all the plaintiff's allegations contained in the notice of claim against the Federal Crown. Well, of course they would. So my job is to say, well, your defense is garbage too. But that's that's an anticipation. This is the fun one here. The Small Claims Court has no jurisdiction to adjudicate claims against the Federal Crown, Crown liabilities procedures, right? RSC 1985, right? C50 subsection 21(1). Now, we're going to get into where there was actually an amendment to this that came out in 1992. So we're actually explaining the amendment because it all goes to jurisdiction. So where this existed up till 95, we're going to explain the amendment. We're going to give you where to go to find a copy of this law where it comes to the Crown's jurisdiction from 1886 all the way to present day. So that when you deal with these guys, right? I mean, they're going to pick the quickest, easiest thing that they want to look at. They're not going to go back and start looking into case studies and history, because to them, they're the Crown. I'll just go and send you a threatening letter because what I'm going to say next, which involves a thesaurus. I mean, hopefully everybody has one. They're kind of fun to use. So the notice of claim is also frivolous, fictitious, scandalous, and an abusive process, lacking any prospect of success. So, again, great use of thesauruses. Does he understand what any of those words mean? Probably not. He doesn't have to. What he has to do is his idea is to try to push this off. So what we've noticed is that this claim is so threatening to the PMO and the Prime Minister right now because, the Prime Minister, let's face it, he's called the Crime Minister for a reason. So, he's using this poor guy. And I say this poor guy for a reason. Because, Giulio Paletti, even if he's a staunch liberal, you really don't, he's not going to he's not volunteering to do this. He's being ordered to do this. This is going to get into our corruption and collusion, or abdicating and obfuscating when we get into what the deep state was and how it operates and how this is a prime example of exactly how this is being foisted on the public and on the people. So the next thing is, the federal crown requests the notice of claim be dismissed and the cost payable to the federal crown. They've asked for zero in costs. This is, again, it's a stalling tactic. 6 weeks from now, we're most likely will have a different government. If not, God knows what position we're going to be in. It's almost scary to think because I don't think if this government exists 6 weeks from now that it's going to be a peaceful period in Canadian history. So now the original suit, we never really expressed what we sued over. So I'm going to read what the original suit actually says. It says what happened. So the Honorable Prime Minister and list of co-defendants, once being made aware of criminal activity, chose not to enforce the laws identified as 217.1, the Criminal Liabilities of Organizations Act. The ensuing email exchange from the PMO became an embarrassment, which is addressed by the weaponizing of the CRA, which caused the primary bank, the Bank of Nova Scotia, to become engaged in a fraud that resulted in the fraudulent conveyance of the company's primary accounts. So that's the summation of the account, right? So filing for how much, the life and health of the oil and gas workers, the communities around the industry, activity, the application of laws prescribed by the previous bill C-45, now the Canadian law 217.1, Criminal Liability of Organizations Act, not having a government that weaponizes the CRA against people it disagrees with. Now we've seen other examples, especially since this year, we've seen quite a few examples now of the PMO weaponizing the CRA. Now, forego the financial reward of the above for the judiciary to rule on the need for criminal charges against the defendants. Now the defendants being the current Prime Minister, the PMO, the different ministries and ministers, that there's no way that the Crown is ever going to fine for them, and we can't obvious crimes that he's been found, that our PMO, our Prime Minister, has been found guilty of already. You can't get the RCMP or the Crown to do anything. Hence, tomorrow morning, while we have a gentleman, let's see if I can remember his name here. It was Norm. It's on a piece of paper here somewhere. But Norman, he went and filed a information, and if you don't know what that means, they like to say, well, that's a very rare thing. Actually, every time an RCMP officer, or any officer of law, or the Crown charges you with anything, they file what's called an information. They just don't like the fact that we as citizens can also file informations, which means we can assume the position of the law. When we file civilian information, we become the Crown. Now, the Crown, when you go up before a hearing in front of a judge, the Crown generally is present, and if they find there's if it's a valid claim, which is going on tomorrow with Norman, he goes up in front of a judge over the PMO allegations. If they find that there's a justifiable claim, the Crown can take it over. Now, I imagine if they do take it over in his case, they'll take it over to try to wash it under the rug until after the election. So that's where we're kind of at with this. So we're looking at the any awards. We just want to bring up the fact that these crimes happened. And the fraudulent conveyance of a document to guarantee the property of the corporation without due process and precedent set out by the courts. That's pretty obvious stuff. Without the courts themselves actually being a signatory to the guarantee isn't legal. It's the same. That'd be like me sending you a piece of paper saying, okay, now pay me XYZ amount of dollars, otherwise we're going to guarantee or your bank has to send me stuff. I've actually seen lawyers do that to banks and get overturned, and they dance quite nicely when you do that to them, because then they're willing to actually give you anything they own, right? They don't want to get disbarred, so they're very good at it. So what we did in our investigation of the summation of the defense by the Attorney General, by Julio, whatever his name is, what we did is we went and we phoned some friends, and helped have friends in certain positions. They steered us to a certain article. They said, here, the practical guide for proceeding against the federal crown. It was written by Martin C. Ward. It's 12 pages, but what it does is it breaks down the law from 1886, follow through the changes in 87, and then the changes as they go back and forth as the government tries to remove our rights, and the citizens regain rights. So where we're at today, the response from Mr. Paletti in regards to the jurisdiction would have been fine, except for prior to 1992. Prior to 1992, the jurisdiction would have been federal, right? But since 1992, it's a shared jurisdiction. It can be either federal or provincial. Now, as far as the small claims action, he would have been correct there too, had we not included the names as individuals. The names as individuals means the small claims action can go forward. I'll actually provide this for the Crown tomorrow, so they can actually go over it and they can read it, and they can update themselves on the law. So when the next part of this video hits, people understand that when you're obfuscating, colluding, or plain old corruption, wherever you might find yourself, and there are consequences to exactly that. Now, after the Crown Liabilities Procedures Act, the Federal Court of Amendments of 1992, the Exemption Act shared jurisdiction. So that's where we're at with this. The federal court is a statutory court. It's a statutorily granted jurisdictions are maritime, aeronautics, and intellectual property matters. So again, when we go to that, we'll get them a copy. They can see what they want to do with it. Either way, I mean, what they've done by accepting this, right? They've basically said, we don't care. We don't care about your rights, right? So we're going to get into how it worked, how let's just put it this way, how it was a very confusing time. It got to the point where I actually asked for an information so I could just file the federal, the criminal aspect of this of these claims, and I was told no. So today I took it upon myself to phone this Crown, or this lawyer for the Crown, and left him a message on his email, asking if he just didn't realize that there was an amendment in 1992, or if he was ignoring the amendment in 1992, and then that I had a problem filing an information, which, as his job is criminality, he should. I'd appreciate if you look into it and give me a call tomorrow. So we'll see if he calls tomorrow. So that's this video. The next video, we're going to get on to the actual how this identifies the deep state. Most of these people, again, don't even realize that they're part of the deep state. So when we identify this for them, if they end up watching this, they're going to go, "Oh my God, I was just afraid of my job," and that's kind of what they rely on. So here we'll quickly get on to the next one. Have a good day.